Hey guys, how's it going today? Wrestling Observer Live. This is Brian Alvarez, and we will have Dave Meltzer up shortly.
I'm right here.
Oh, there he is right there.
I'm right here.
He was missing at the beginning of the show, but Dave, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Did you know that I was on Man Cow this morning?
No, I didn't know. What happened? Didn't know
I
about this.
finally decided to do the show. They'd been calling a couple times, and I thought, oh, God, why do this? I'd heard about the Jerry Lawler deal and everything like that. So, anyway, it was this morning, and it just happened to be a Wednesday morning at 7:10 a.m., and nobody listening right now can fully comprehend what that means except Dave, because he also was up very late Tuesday night. So,
Oh
anyway,
my God,
I get up
they
at
made you do it.
7
You did it on
o'clock
a
a.m.
Wednesday?
Oh, yeah. 7 o'clock a.m. I get up. I call in. I'm on hold for 10 minutes. And finally the show comes on. And the first thing he says is, we've got Bruce Alvarez from Penthouse here today.
Oh,
And
God.
that's a great sign for the rest of the show today. And anyway, it was basically, Brian, you remember the Bigfoot? The Bigfoot. Perhaps you mean the Yeti. Oh, yeah, that was a horrible gimmick. Yes, it really was. Hey, do you remember the Red Rooster? Yeah, I do. That was a horrible gimmick, too. And it was just like this for about 3 minutes. And there was this one dude, I don't even know who it is because I never listened to the show, but I guess he's called the Screaming Man. And I think he knew more about these horrible gimmicks than I did because he kept screaming the answers. And I just sat there and went, okay, yep, that was horrible. Yeah, that was bad, too. And then it was all over. That was my epic debut on Man Cow. Yes, it was.
Oh, my God. You sound like you're going to be scarred.
Oh, my God. I was scarred because I had to get up so early.
I mean, I've done a lot of radio interviews, and usually they're not that bad. And usually, they ask me about serious subjects, like they're like, steroid use in wrestling and effect on children and things like that.
Yeah, I know. And the article, the funny thing is, the article that just came out in Penthouse was about the death of World Championship Wrestling, which I kind of think is a more important topic than the Bigfoot, who actually I found out later he meant to call Giant Gonzalez. Remember when he had the bodysuit with the fur on it? I guess that's what he was talking about, but I was just like, the Bigfoot.
Giant Gonzalez, Yeti, they're all pretty much the same. They're like these, you know what I mean?
Hey, did you get my Silva thing last night?
I looked at the picture, and it's not him, but it is pretty scary. No. Well, he's not from Angola. He's not from Angola.
Maybe he moved.
No, he lives in New Jersey.
I guess that narrows it down.
Even though he works in Mexico.
I was looking for Paulo Silva last night, and there, I put Paulo Silva in Olympics in this search engine, and here's Paulo Silva in the Olympics in the year 2000 for shooting, like actually shooting a gun.
Yeah, rifling or whatever.
Yeah, then there was a picture of him, and it was only from the back, but it was a really tall dude, and I thought, oh my God, he's a 2-sport superstar.
3-sport. Basketball.
Shooting.
And Lucha Libre. Lucha Libre.
Oh, that's right. I wasn't counting Lucha. I was hoping it was him so we could say he was an Olympic caliber shooter.
That's pretty good. Speaking of which, last night, I missed the Lucha Libre, and I had pretty much the whole issue done early, with the exception of waiting for the results from Grand Forks, which we'll go down to get down with in just a minute. But so I got the Pride tape yesterday, so I sat and watched pretty much most of the Pride show last night and the rest of it this morning. And the one thing about it is, I don't even want to, and we don't hear about this from martial arts people, and it's like I'm almost beating the subject to death by saying it, but when you watch it, it's like driven home even more. Those people were all there to see Fujita and Takayama.
Mm.
I mean, you can just see they had they were like, when they came out there, they were like main event superstars, and the rest of those guys were better fighters, and are, they were, it's not like the other guys aren't over, but when those guys came out, they were like superstars. The other one who's super over was Silva, obviously. Vanderlei Silva, like, as a heel. I mean, like, really big time. And they're going to blow it. I mean, if they have those guys, do these, if they have Sakuraba and Silva do fights on these next couple of shows, waiting, trying to give them big wins, you know what I mean? Yeah. Something always happens when you do that.
Well, Joe was right when he was talking about, when you have a match, you just got to do the match. Especially in shooting.
I'll tell you what about Joe. Joe's a pretty smart guy when it comes to this stuff. And, yeah. The other thing, the other thing, like watching that show, was in the Silva match with Shigeo Oyama. I think it's Shungo Oyama. That thing was so ridiculously stopped ahead of time. I mean, like, you probably read the reports. It's like it was stopped. I mean, unless you see it and it's going to be on pay-per-view when it's on 16th. I mean, you won't even believe how ridiculous that stoppage was. It's like they're just trading punches.
Well, he wasn't even down, right?
No, not at all.
Oyama was like walking away from him, and they stopped it.
He kind of turned his head and started just trying to get out of the way of. They were trading punches, and he was not doing the better of it, and that wasn't what his game should have been. He kind of turned his head, and the referee just goes in there and waves it off. And it's like he wasn't stunned. He wasn't like not defending himself. He hadn't even gotten hit yet. I mean, he may have been in a position where he could have gotten hit if he didn't run fast enough for the guy to hit him. But I mean, you've seen a million fighters in that same position. That was ridiculous.
I think, as a general rule, you kind of should be on the ground when the referee stops the fight.
No. If you've been hit on the button and you're just like up against the rope, but but then you're stunned. Yeah. No, if you're standing
but
up,
if you're going down and you're,
if you're on your way down,
on your feet, you're going to be down in a second.
Yeah, your lights are. His eyes weren't crossed or anything like that. There was nothing like that going on. I also saw the Heath Herring match with Vitor Belfort. Where everybody said how the decision was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
If you judge it, I had it judged as a draw because Herring won the first 2 rounds, but Herring had 1 point taken away because of his weight, and he had another point taken away because he grabbed the ropes to avoid a takedown. So that evens it up. 2 points for the round and then 2 points for that. And then the third round.
You get 1 point for winning a round?
Yeah, well, if you kill a guy in a round, you can get 2 points for winning a round, but generally speaking, a round would be 10-9. Unless you're just... and Herring came nowhere near murdering him, although he easily won the first 2 rounds. The third round, Vitor got the first 2 and was ahead on the first 2.5 minutes. Herring reversed him, and he was ahead the last 2.5 minutes. It was like split right down the middle. It was a draw round, if ever there is a draw round, and the fight's a draw. So, I mean, I guess all those judges must have given Vitor the third round, and I don't know why. I mean, but I guess I'm not sure I think you have to vote a winner there, so maybe that's it. I don't know. I do not know, but anyway, it wasn't, I could see if you're a fan watching this as a fight and you're going like, God, this guy, dominated the first 2 rounds and the third round was close. He obviously won the decision. But if you're judging it by their point criteria, I still don't think Vitor should have won, but I couldn't, but when it's a draw, you can't call either side a bad decision. It's just, you know what I mean, when it's that close? You can't cry about something that close. Anyway, let's get off of that stuff and get to SmackDown last night from Grand Forks, North Dakota. And it does not, on paper and based on the reports I got so far, it doesn't sound like it's the caliber of the last 2 SmackDowns. But then again, it'd be pretty darn hard to be. The main thing on Heat, they did one angle, which was Billy Gunn turned heel on Matt Hardy after Matt Hardy beat him with a twist of fate. They went to shake hands, and Billy Gunn gave him the Cobra Clutch Slam. So,
got to resurrect that career on Heat.
Yeah. SmackDown, Kurt Angle beat Hardcore Bob Holly with the Angle Slam. I heard that was a really good match. They did an interview. We'll get to this. The whole show was built around Spike Dudley and Molly Holly having their first kiss, and they're about to kiss. There's like 3 or 4 of these segments in here. They're about to kiss, and then Perry Saturn walks in, kind of sticks his head between them, and they both kiss the side of Perry Saturn's head, which I hope it's funnier than it sounds.
Oh my God! You know what? We always have these things with Spike and Molly, and we hear about them, and we say, "We'll just have to watch it. Maybe it'll look okay," and it never does.
Well, I used to like this.
How can you go to be kissing someone and someone sticks their head in between, and you kiss the guy's head?
Yeah. Well, then I think the same sort of thing happens with Tajiri and then with Kai and Tai, and then finally they get a moment alone and they kiss. So I guess that's supposed to be the big pop. Like I said, I liked the Spike and Molly stuff for a while, but then on Monday I kind of turned on it because it was just like, this is just not, this like I like you and I like you too. It's like, who are we writing this for now?
You get so much behind people who communicate on the Titantron to each other.
Yes. Let's see. Jeff Hardy beat Jerry Lynn to win the light heavyweight title. It was a clean pin. I heard that it was very short, or just a short match, that the work was good, and that there was not a lot of heat until the last 30 seconds of the match. The crowd did not give them the response that they deserved, which is not the first time we've heard that. Kane beat X-Pac to keep the Intercontinental, and then the whole X Factor beat up Kane afterwards, and Albert gave him the Albert Bomb or the Baldo bomb afterwards. So it looks like they're setting up Kane against
Albert. A
Albert.
match nobody wants to see.
A match nobody. There you go. That's exactly what I thought when I heard that. Was like, Albert's a really big guy, and he's not a bad worker, but he does have no charisma. And they're all, the whole thing is those guys. That's again one of the dangers of like actually being there in the locker room, because you walk around the locker room and you see this big guy, and he's in shape, pretty much. I mean, he's not like he's cut or nothing, but he's not a slob. You know what I mean? He's a huge guy with a giant head, and he's physically impressive. And you just go, man, it's like, people will believe, he's big enough to fight Kane. He's almost the size of Kane, but the other side of it is that, yeah, it's true. And he's not a bad worker, but nobody wants to see it. So what does it matter? And,
I was just thinking of another danger when you're actually in the back. You can have a guy that backstage is really outgoing and funny and cool, but it absolutely does not translate on TV. But everyone's back there with this cool guy, and it's like, hey, this guy's got charisma or whatever, and he's really big. Let's give him a push. And everyone at home is like, why is this guy on my TV set?
Kevin Nash. Although Owen Hart was like that. And Owen Hart never got the big push based on the fact that he was really funny backstage.
Well, Kevin Nash, it kind of came across on TV.
When he was motivated.
Mm-hmm.
When he was not motivated, that Kevin Nash, boy, he was quite the boom to business when he was not motivated, wasn't he? Let's see. Mick Foley apologizes for hitting Chris Jericho with a chair and nicely asks Jericho asks Mick Foley nicely to stay out of his business. Regal does an interview. Mick Foley comes out. They argue back and forth about New York Times bestsellers. Regal they're basically a segment to promote the book. Regal says that it's an embarrassment that all those great authors are like behind Mick Foley in the bestseller list, which actually I'm sure that there's a lot of people who think that too. And probably none of them read the book, but that's another story. But I'm sure that there's like, all of those people that do book reviews like all over the country, and they look at that thing. I think that they're all like embarrassed, and they shouldn't be, but I'm sure they are. So anyway, security ends up taking Mick Foley out, and it looks like they're going to be doing a Mick Foley William Regal program. I don't think they're going to do a match, but maybe they will. Maybe there's a lot of ways they can go with all this. Fighting over the commissionership. Maybe Foley ends up commissioner of WCW, which wouldn't be the worst idea at all. Test and Shane have a nice little conversation.
They could even do one match with the commissionership on the line, and of course everyone's going to expect Foley to win, but they swerve the fans. Foley does not win, and he ends up commissioner of WCW.
Great, WCW is going to be the organization for losers.
Yeah, that's the only problem.
The organization for losers, cool. Speaking of which, Test tells Shane that he thinks the invasion's going great. So, isn't that cool? Then he kind of warns him. And then he warns him the Undertaker's after him. Dudley's beat Malenko and Saturn with 3D on Saturn, who was not the legal man in the ring. Let's see, Undertaker attacks Shane because Vince told him to, and Kane kind of tells him to stop, and Kane explains to Undertaker that he does not believe Shane had anything to do with it. And in fact, let's see, he may or may not have something to do with it, now that I think about it.
That Undertaker is really stupid on TV lately. Have you ever noticed that? For like the last 3 weeks, people keep telling Undertaker stuff, and he just blindly believes them. Why is that? Especially to portray your babyface as an idiot.
Yeah, especially, blindly believe
Vince, and Vince goes, "Oh, it's my son," and Undertaker goes, "He must be telling the truth."
It's Vince.
Yeah.
Okay, Edge beat Test in the King of the Ring qualifier when Test had Edge just about beat. Christian's on the apron distracting him, and Edge does, I believe, the downward spiral, but I'm not sure. But he gets the pin. So another WCW future superstar doing another job. Then the main event was supposed to be Benoit and Jericho against Vince and Austin, but first William Regal had for the tag team titles, William Regal had a couple of blocks to send to Benoit and Jericho. So first they send the Acolytes out there. Benoit and Jericho beat the Acolytes when, I remember Jarrett pinned Farouk. Oh my God, Jericho pinned Farouk. I couldn't be mixing those two up subconsciously. Oh, that would be really scary. Benoit and Jericho beat the Big Show and Rhino on a DQ, and Rhino hit both guys with a chair, and then Big Show chokeslammed Benoit. So they haven't given up on the Big Show completely. I would have just said after Monday, it's okay, that was the last thing the Big Show needed to do, and I don't, you know what I mean?
You know what the danger is though? If everybody beats Big Show and everybody accepts that he is a jobber, then it means less and less every time he gets beat.
Right, that's why I was saying
something for him every now and then.
Okay,
it doesn't have to be much, but
yeah. once you did that, I don't think there is anything. I just figured the thing is you have the guys beat him in the way to get him over, and that's really all he can do is put other people over.
Yeah. But it's useless if he's considered just a nobody and a goof.
Oh yeah, but unless you're good, but if you're not going to push him, inherently either you're going to push a guy or you're not. And if you're not going to push him, then he is useless. If you want him to be useful, then you have to push him. They don't want to push him, so therefore he's useless. Anyway, inherently. Okay, then that led to, they left Benoit and Jericho laying, which of course meant Vince and Austin came out for the tag team title match, and they started pounding on Benoit and Jericho, and they pretty much beat him up the whole match, which is cool. And then Austin gave both of them stunners, but when he gave Jericho the stunner, Benoit had recovered enough to roll Austin up holding the tights, so Benoit and Jericho, in fact, won the match. So that's what happened there. Poll for yesterday is on the Raw show. Kind of interesting results. 10% excellent, 31% good, which was the majority, and I think that's where I would come in. I don't know if I would go as far as excellent on Monday's show. I would say pretty damn good, though. Average 27%, bad 20%. 20% thought that was we've seen a lot of bad TV lately, and last
I don't think
Monday night
Monday was one of them.
Monday wasn't one of them. 11%. 11% didn't see the show. Today's poll is on the King of the Ring main event. You can pick which match you would want to see most, or would make you want to buy the show the most. We got I don't remember exactly the order, but it's Austin and Undertaker, which isn't going to happen. Austin against Benoit, which isn't going to happen. Austin against Jericho, which isn't going to happen. And Austin against Benoit versus Jericho, which is going to happen. So anyway, you can vote for all of them, or you could vote for none of them, because the E selection is I'm not buying the pay-per-view. Anyway, and speaking of pay-per-views, today was the New Japan pay-per-view from Budokan Hall. And Brian, have you seen the results yet?
Yeah.
What did
Remember
you
we
make?
were talking about the last New Japan show and how generally all the booking was very good.
Yes, and that was only 2 days ago.
What?
And then
hell
today I'm
happened
looking at this.
night?
And then today I'm looking at this and I'm going like, what the hell were they thinking? They did a best of 5. This is only the second time in wrestling history that they ever did like one of those best of where the last matches didn't matter. And the first time they did it was when the Radicals first came into WWF, and they actually had planned to do it, but Eddie Guerrero blew out his elbow and decided to tell Road Dogg, I think it was, to pin him right away, when in fact Road Dogg should have pinned himself right away. So then Hunter and Benoit were out there doing a lame duck match, which Hunter won anyway. So it was a 3-0 sweep. Well, anyway, this is All Japan against New Japan, best of 5. Now, I think this is a New Japan pay-per-view, and it's All Japan against New Japan, best of 5. So anyway, let's go. This is how they did it. The first match was Masafuchi against El Samurai, and Masafuchi's the All Japan guy, and he won.
Oh, and what the hell was that all about?
What, Fuchi beating Samurai?
Yeah.
That's just a match. I didn't really care who won that match. As far as, that's not a big deal. It's just to get... All Japan gets off on a good foot. They're the underdogs. There's nothing wrong with that. I know Samurai's a better worker than Fuchi, but, they're both pretty much, they're both pretty much under, you know what I mean? Neither of them are being pushed right now anyway. Mm-hmm. Second match, Masahito Kakihara against Minoru Tanaka, which I heard was an excellent match, which I would have expected. Minoru Tanaka, of course, is the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. So New Japan's putting its World Junior Heavyweight Champion against All Japan, which... I don't think they have a junior heavyweight champion right now, and if they did, Kakihara would actually probably be it, but he's not right now. And Kakihara won. So All Japan went up 2-0, and they did such a great job in that junior tournament of keeping Tanaka strong, but making Liger stronger, and setting up, they got 2 opponents already set up for Tanaka. They got Liger for a title match because he beat Tanaka on Monday to win the tournament, and Naruse, not Masayushi Naruse from Rings, who showed up and issued the challenge for the interpromotional thing. So they got their interpromotional challenger. They got their in-company challenger. They don't need another challenger. So this guy has you shouldn't be beating your world champion unless there's a purpose to beating your world champion. And
it wasn't even like a long, grueling match.
No, it was like 6 or 7 minutes. I think 6 minutes, 42 seconds, something like that. I don't have the time in front of me. Mitsuya Nagai beat Takashi Iizuka. So All Japan is up 3-0 in this thing.
And it's over already.
And it's over. And it's like, why would Nagai beat Iizuka? Although I heard they had a good match. It was a referee stoppage after one of those, a kick to the face. He knocked him out. So now it's 3-0 All Japan. It's like, it's over. So anyway, after that, Mike Barton lost to Manabu Nakanishi. which I heard was not terrible. So, and it was like 4 minutes. So anyway, that's 3-1. And then finally, it doesn't even matter who wins the final match. You put Kawada in there with Kojima. You would think that this would be like the big one where you got the two big stars in the thing, the two biggest stars in this best of five, going at it. The winning team wins it for his company. But New Japan's already lost anyway, and Kawada beats Kojima. So All Japan won 4-1 on the New Japan show. Jushin Liger, Jinsei Shinzaki, and Taiokiya beat Masahiro Chono, Akira, and Hiroyoshi Tenzan. And then Keiji Muto beat Hiroshi Hase in 39 minutes and 8 seconds, which...
Wow.
That is like... I'm thinking of I'm laying out this show, okay? If I'm a booker laying out this show, and Hiroshi Hase was like the mystery opponent, which actually, as a mystery goes... as far as a mystery opponent goes, it's not exactly the worst that I've ever heard. I guess it actually got out. Someone told me it actually got out on the Japanese internet about 2 days earlier because, listen to this. Hase, of course, is a senator in Japan. Mm-hmm. And somebody had seen, this is in Hase's notebook, somebody had seen that he was, for his schedule, like one of his workers had seen, and of course, you know how they kayfabe everything if you're a mystery guy there, that he was taking Wednesday off, and he kind of put in a note to do a wrestling show, and they noted that All Japan did not have a show booked on Wednesday. So he must be the mystery opponent on the New Japan show. And it actually got out. So there were actually people who knew that. I didn't know it ahead of time, but I found out people did. Someone emailed me from Japan going, I knew, because it was all on the bulletin board. So anyway, there was a day when a Keiji Muto versus Hiroshi Hase match that went 39 minutes would be something like, oh my God, like 10 years ago? Like, oh my God. I mean, these were probably two of the 5 best guys in the entire business. I don't know what
that was 10 years ago.
That was 10 years ago. One guy's a senator and one guy's got no knees. But what I did hear was the last 10 minutes of the match were excellent, which I got to see to believe because I haven't seen a lot of excellent Muto in a singles match. I mean, God, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe the Kawada, but anyway, if I was laying that thing out, I would have given more time to some of those undercard matches and a little less time to this one. And then the main event was
a little more time to Nakanishi and Barton.
Not that one. I think that 4 minutes was about as much time as I would have risked on that match myself. Fujita and Nagata had the main event for the IWGP title, and they did a total Pride-looking match, with the Pride positioning, went back and forth, and finally Fujita just pounded the hell out of Nagata, and the referee stopped the match. And they both shook hands after, so Fujita won, which I guess means that they're going with Fujita and Mark Coleman at the, one of the Dome shows coming up.
Sounds like a plan.
Yep, and
I'm
Nagata
telling you, you just wait.
They can't do it in a shoot, though. Can't do it in a shoot.
Okay.
By the way, Fujita Takayama was a hell of a match. And it was a hell of a match. It's one of those things where, how sometimes two guys that really aren't good fighters, you put them in a fight and they just have a hell of a fight? Mm-hmm. That's what it was. I mean, they just brutalized each other. The other match on that show, the Pele match where everybody was talking about how this is this awesome match, and it is a good match. If you compare it to the Matt Serra match with Shoney Carter at the last UFC, it's not even in the same league. I mean, mm-hmm. It's a good match, and I think if you're a pro wrestling fan, you'll get it. If you're a Japanese, it's a good match if you're a Japanese pro wrestling fan because he used what was Matsui, who's a pro wrestler, used pro wrestling moves in the course of a real fight, like drop kicks, trying to smash the guy in a turnbuckle.
Well, I love it when Sakuraba does that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's cool if you're a Japanese wrestling fan. He bounce his head, and he did some really cool thing. This really cool thing is he would have him down, and then he would run his shoulder into the guy. Instead of punching him in the face, he would run his shoulder into the face. It looks really cool. But anyway, so because of that, I think a lot of wrestling fans really got off on it, especially that drop kick. You know what? I got to say this though. After watching him throw 2 drop kicks in a match. If you're in a real fight and you're throwing a drop kick, you're out of your mind. You're an idiot. Yeah.
I used to always think that with high kicks. Because I always see these guys go for high kicks or spinning kicks and just get brutalized afterwards. But sometimes it works. But I don't think probably 90% of the time it does't.
Okay, but I don't think the drop kick...
It's a little higher than that.
I don't think the drop kick will ever work. I mean, even the one that connected, it's like he connected, but it's what does it mean?
Exactly.
WWF and Kmart are doing a promotion for Father's Day. For every $20 worth of WWF merchandise you buy at Kmart, customers will get a WrestleMania DVD, which tells me they got a lot of those left over. And a 3-month sub to the magazine. Any other news to get to, Brian, before we
start? This is like those things, when you order a pay-per-view and they go, send your pay-per-view bill and you'll get, this piece of merchandise or whatever. It's like always closeout stuff that nobody's buying. So I should tell you about those DVDs. I'm sure they sold a hell of a lot of DVDs, though.
Before. Let's see. This is Jeff Merrick's going to be up in just a couple of minutes. I want to remind everyone of that. As a longtime listener from Scotland, I would be interested to hear whether you think Owen Hart would have ever been promoted to main event status in the WWF, barring his untimely death. Apart from his run with Brett, he was never in a high-profile position on the card, and wonder if this was due to any particular reason. For example, his heat with Austin, which didn't help him, I will say that, and his size, or perhaps being a Hart left after the Survivor Series. I don't think that there's any you can put your finger on. Owen, of course, was a very good worker. He lacked a little bit in the charisma department, and he was not a big guy. But he was one of those guys where when they had big guys...
He had a different sort of charisma.
No, but it's not main event charisma. It's like semi-main event charisma.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when in that period, like 90... during the bad period of WWF, like 96-ish, Owen was, or 95, whatever it was, Owen would be one of those guys that they would put in with, like, somebody like Kevin Nash or Ultimate Warrior, because it's like, this guy's the total drizzling, whatever. So we'll put Owen in there to have a TV match with him.
Yeah.
And, and plus, so that was kind of the thing. I mean, Owen's role would have changed when Benoit and those guys came because he would have new opponents. And I don't know what would have happened because, I think Benoit's a better worker than Owen was. Although, Owen motivated could have come pretty darn close. And, he may have been, especially with Angle coming up as well. And, they all kind of match up size-wise, although Angle's weight-wise, I think is quite a bit bigger these days. But not then. And at that time, he may have gone up with those guys. You just don't know. As far as why he didn't, he had the good run with Brett. With Austin, Austin didn't want to work with him much, so they just kind of blew that off when Austin came back. And then the thing, they were planning big things after Survivor Series. Owen was actually in big plans. Owen and Shawn Michaels were supposed to be this big feud, coming off of that thing, and then Shawn hurt his back in San Jose, and the feud never got off the ground. Owen went to feud with Hunter, and, no matter how they tried to slice it, there was no issue with Hunter. You know what I mean? It's like they tried to do the Brett issue with Shawn. Well, there is no Shawn, so we'll do with Hunter, but Hunter didn't have anything to do with screwing Brett, so there was no issue, and Owen really got cold in the feud with Hunter because Hunter really never put him over. Imagine that. And, I know someone's going to find an example of where he lost a match, but Hunter as the heel dominated the feud. And also Hunter was a better talker and kind of made, when they would go back and forth, the babyface was supposed to look smarter. And Hunter was the one who was the more clever of the two, going back and forth. And I think that hurt Owen a lot.
Though.
What?
That's been the story of his career.
Yeah. Anyway, we got Jeff on the line. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. Hey, Brian. What's going on, guys?
Hey. Not too much. What's so are you at the show in Oldcastle?
No, not yet. We're actually at Scott Demore's place here with John Callis, who I guess is a big surprise announcement for tonight's show. Tommy Dreamer's here, Nova, Swinger. Just waiting to go to the show. Lance Storm's flight's delayed, but I guess he'll be here in about 45 minutes.
All right, that's cool. Jeff, what's your thoughts as far as like the change in the WWF main event to from a two-way to a three-way with Benoit involved, and also with Benoit's condition?
The last I heard about Benoit's condition, he was having a hard time working out. If you notice in that Big Show match, and if you go back and look at the majority of the SmackDown match from last week, he had to do everything with his left side. He's chopping with his left hand.
I couldn't figure out why that was for a long time.
Yeah, he's got a pinched nerve in his neck, and it's causing his right arm to atrophy. So, now you don't want to say Paul Orndorff, but, the thought's kind of in everyone's mind, yeah.
Wow.
As far as switching that main to a three-way, it doesn't look good for the two baby faces they're trying to make, coming off Austin beating Benoit twice, and then Austin beating Jericho. I didn't see what happened on SmackDown last night. It makes it look like, and Dave, you and I talked about this yesterday, it makes it look like the two baby faces weren't good enough to beat them one-on-one, and even though it's a three-way, fans are still looking at it like a handicap match.
Yeah, it's like it takes both of them put together to be competitive with Austin.
Yeah, exactly.
I felt when I started thinking about this match, it reminded me of some of that WCW booking of baby faces at the end when they couldn't get their baby faces over. You know, where they would do. You remember the classic example was the West Texas Rednecks and Master P's guys. Remember the thing where Kurt Hennig would be left alone? Would be left alone with all of these baby faces.
There'd be like 30 of Master P's guys attacking him.
Yeah, and then they couldn't understand why people
Kurt Hennig was getting cheered. That was the best part.
Yeah, and then they went to those Master P's guys. What were they called again? No Limit Soldiers.
No Limit Soldiers.
The No Limit Soldiers, and then they went to them when that thing was over, and they go, "You guys can't get over his baby faces. Nobody likes you."
It was the most awesome. Yeah, too. And then the West Texas Rednecks heated up as strong baby faces. I mean, considering that was like predominantly a Southern promotion, and so they killed it right away. It's just unreal. It's like you bring in like these super cool rappers from the North against like these rednecks from the South, and the heel and face is just totally reversed, and then go, "Oh, Master P, you stink. You can't get over the face." What? I mean, come on.
God.
You know, I've never booked a wrestling match in my life, but that's obvious to anyone, isn't it?
A lot of people who never booked a wrestling match saw that one coming.
There are a lot of things that you would think would be obvious to people that for some reason are not.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You know, actually, when I look back at the booking of Jericho over like the last 2.5 weeks, I'm not really surprised that Vince doesn't feel that he's a strong enough singles main eventer against Austin. But the whole thing is, it's all Vince's fault the way he's portrayed this guy. It's not Jericho's fault. I just look at, I mean, I didn't think it was so bad at the time, but looking back today, why did Rhino pin him?
Oh, well, it was the timing was all wrong. We talked about that the day after, right after it happened. Yeah.
You know, why did Edge pin Jericho 2 weeks ago?
And Christian. He did 2 jobs in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
and Rhino beat him in a hardcore match about a month ago too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like they obviously were not preparing Jericho for anything, and then right before the pay-per-view, basically the days before the pay-per-view was kind of like, we need to get some baby faces over. Benoit, Jericho, everyone complains about you guys not getting pushed, so they pushed him to the moon. After, at a point where neither of them were really all that hot, as far as, where their positioning was. And then they gave him the huge push for 2 weeks. And now, they're in the pay-per-view main event. I mean, but, it's like, I
just look at it as, Rock wasn't built overnight. Steve Austin wasn't built overnight. It took Hunter 5 years. And here's Vince freaking out after 2 weeks.
At the same time, they really started to build these guys at, the worst possible time. I mean, everyone complains, you're not getting Jericho over, you're not getting Benoit over, you're not doing anything with these guys. And they finally do it, and they pick just the most horrible time to do it. Jericho's getting buried on TV, ditto for Benoit, the weak on babyface is up top, and you go to the 2 guys who are probably at their weakest point in the last 2 years.
And also at a time when the fewest casual fans were watching.
Yeah.
Because the audience, because of the diminished audience.
Yeah, no one was seeing good stuff happen.
Jeff, now, the diminished audience, what's your thought on that? And, just the fact that, since WrestleMania, I mean, a lot of people, I don't know, this whole thing with the just let's talk about the WCW thing. I mean, how it's been handled. What's your thoughts on that?
It's been handled horribly. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Vince McMahon, I guess we can start with the TV deal. I'm pretty sure that Vince McMahon went to, TNN and said, hey, we're buying World Championship Wrestling, and, and we're going to have another TV show. Can we place it on TNN? I'm sure TNN said, yeah, absolutely. Vince, doing the Carney talk and not telling him that he's going to put WCW on and not, The Rock or Austin or anything like that. And then once TNN realized that, hey, you know what, this is a show that's got, Lance Storm and Mike Awesome and Buff Bagwell, they're not too cool with it. And so obviously they're rushing this thing together. Doing interpromotional right off the bat, is a mistake. We all know it, but it's really their only option.
Well, they have to get those guys on Raw somehow. And I'm just, it's just so funny to me that, the first 2 guys that are on are Lance Storm and Hugh Morris, who I don't know if the idea is that you're waiting for the big guns to come.
Everyone is waiting for the big guns to come, absolutely. This is
I'm just saying,
they better get, I'll tell you, they better get a big gun on the pay-per-view, or else
they'll have 1 or 2 big guns in some form on the pay-per-view or the Monday after the pay-per-view. I mean, the medium big guns, though. I mean, if you're talking about big guns, Bill Goldberg, Ric Flair, Sting, no, obviously they're not going to have those big guns.
Booker T's a good one to have.
Well, Booker T's going to be on TV, sooner than later. You know what I mean? It's going to be within a couple of weeks, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. The handling of this has been a disaster. I'm sure internally they know that this thing is even more screwed up than they even thought. Now they have all these contracts, they're paying all these dollars, and they have no show with these guys. Everyone's getting sort of 2 minutes here and 2 minutes there, and Shane's got his little angle with Kurt. But I mean, something's got to give within the next 6 weeks, or else this whole thing is just going to be a disaster.
Before we head to a break, I want to ask you one quick question as far as Brian Lawler and Eddie Guerrero and the handling of both situations, which were different situations and handled differently. And what are your thoughts on how both were handled? Well, I mean,
if Eddie Guerrero's situation happened in public, I'm sure he would have been fired as well. Right now, the WWF can't handle any more negative PR. Again, I still thought Lawler should have been at least afforded the opportunity to go to rehab. I mean, that's a diplomatic way of keeping everybody happy, of sort of, keeping a guy on your roster, assuming they still want to keep him, of course, and also placating the media who are going to come after you hard by saying, we're not just going to fire him. We care about our athletes. We care about our talent. We're going to give him a chance to rehab himself, as opposed to just the knee-jerk reaction of firing him.
But don't you think that as far as with Brian Lawler, I mean, the difference with that is that it's not
illegal drugs as opposed to prescription.
It's illegal drugs as opposed to prescription drugs, and also the stupidity involved in it. And we talked about this. I mean, it's like, it's one thing. A lot of guys do a lot of things, and everyone knows it, and they kind of don't talk about it. And sometimes, the pills get out of control and all that. It's another to do something and, try to bring stuff across the border, which is just pure stupidity because, the publicity and everything like that. And he should have known better.
It is ridiculous and it's asinine, especially considering that everybody knew that when the guys got to Vancouver for the house show on Sunday, that the border patrol, so to speak, had the latex gloves on and were making guys touch their toes. So really, he should have known better. Having said that, they still could have babyfaced themselves by going the compassionate angle and saying, we care about our talent, and we're not just going to fire him. Brian Lawler has a problem, and we're going to try to help him.
And I want to read this one thing, and then we're going to hit some calls. This is from Todd Martin, who said, regarding Brian's spiel on yesterday's show, entrance music has never made any sense. How did they have Kane's music and pyro all ready to go at the very end of the show before he did the run at the spur of the moment at Judgment Day? How did they know to have Mick Foley's music in the Titantron montage ready on Raw when even Vince didn't know that Foley was there? Yes, the siren and the WCW logo is silly in terms of mood for WCW run-ins, but it's not even close to the top of the list of logic gaps in this convoluted angle. So anyway, this is from Steve Gerwick, who says, actually it's not from Mitch, through Steve Gerwick, I guess. How is Conan able to work for WWC while he's under contract at WCW? Conan, when he signed his contract, his new contract, I think in January, the provision in the contract is that he would be, most of the guys are not allowed to work independent dates, but in his contract, he was allowed to work independent dates as long as they were not in the United States. So he can work Mexico, and even though nobody wants him there yet, and he's actually not clear to wrestle there yet. Eventually he'll be there, I'm sure.
What does that mean by independent? Does that mean he couldn't work for EMLL or AAA?
No, he can work for him. He can work for anyone, as long as it's out. He can work for anybody he wants as long as it's outside of the United States. That was part of his deal. What's the status of Jeff Jarrett, the Demon, and Bam Bam Bigelow? Jeff Jarrett, it doesn't appear that WWF is interested in him. Bam Bam Bigelow the same, and the Demon, I think the Demon just got hired by the Montreal Expos. In fact, I know he did.
Bam Bam Bigelow doesn't seem like he's interested in wrestling anymore. If you look at the last 6 months of his career.
Yeah, that's true too. We'll start with Dan in Chicago. Dan, what's going on?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing good.
Hey.
Now, last night, I don't know if you know anything about the Chicago radio stations. They have a radio station.
I know something about them today.
They have a radio show called WrestleManiacs. I don't know if you know that.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I've ever done that show or not.
Yeah, it was mentioned a couple times about the Bret Hart stuff.
Oh, that Bret Hart's going to WWF?
Yeah. And
well, they are clueless.
They said,
I got to tell you something.
Dave said that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
That's really good reporting.
Not that you're clueless, but the fact that you said that, that you're right on about the Bret Hart stuff and you're a good source of wrestling. That you know your stuff and Bob Ryder doesn't really know much. which I...
I'm not going to say Bob Ryder doesn't know stuff.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what, though. On a story that big, I don't know, man. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And he tried to even, blame that one on me, didn't he? That was so sad.
Roundabout way.
That was really sad. I got to say that was really sad. I mean, and I blew it on stories too, but I mean, my God, it's that one was a big, that's a big one to blow. I'll tell you. I mean, because you're talking about a story that, let's face it. I mean, first of all, the fact that everybody was so freaked out about it tells you what a big story it was. And second, it's a story that on the surface. I mean, when Brian heard it, when I heard that thing, I mean, our first reaction was, no way. Yeah. So it's like when it's something where your reaction is no way, you better do a lot of thought on you know what I mean? It's like something that's I don't know. What can I say?
Hey guys, we just got to the arena here. I got Don Callis beside me. You want to chat with him?
Absolutely. But
hang on.
Dan, just to finish up and then we'll go to Don.
All right,
Hello, lads.
I got the stalker. One more time, I'll give you one last name.
Okay, you can
Don
go for the
Callis.
stalker.
Paul Bearer.
Okay, it's not Paul Bearer.
Are you sure?
That's a match I'd want to see, Undertaker and Paul Bearer.
No, Undertaker. From what I hear, is that not that there's a new brother, but the fact is that's what they were saying last night.
Oh no, they're going to bring in the guy from Ohio Valley as his brother.
Why don't you think it's Paul Bearer?
No, because
they have to have a match. The whole thing is in wrestling, you build up to have a match between two people. You don't just have an angle for the hell of it. And Paul Bearer and Undertaker are not going to have a match.
No, I didn't say that. And they could bring somebody else in, not like a brother situation, but like somebody else with Paul Bearer.
But why would Paul Bearer be stalking her?
Because Undertaker and Kane are so popular, and he's a little upset about the whole that
he's upset at
He's upset that he's a talent scout now instead of on TV.
instead of Paul Bearer.
That would be a good angle.
Am I being laughed at?
You made me become a talent scout. I have to go and watch all these guys.
Am I being laughed at?
No.
Okay, no, but it's not Paul Bearer.
Okay. All right, guys.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right. Hey, Don, how you doing?
Doing real good. My God, Alvarez just all over the callers today.
Oh.
Well, we're just trying to keep logical thinking, which is actually sometimes tough in wrestling.
I just get frustrated because every day on this show we plug our website every single day, and we don't make a dime off that website. All we use it for is for the people. I'm sure, yes, we do use it to plug our newsletters, but we put the news up there. I go up onto that bulletin board every day and answer questions for free for the people. And I get so frustrated that people can't go up there to the website and read that stuff. Just please, That's what we put it up there for.
And Brian, I have to say that the highlight of my entire week is when my Figure 4 newsletter comes in the mail, and I smile like I've never smiled before about the wrestling business.
Thank you, I appreciate
the highlight of my week is when I get it and it's not Mangle. No, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes. No. I love reading. I love reading. What's so good about the Figure 4 is that you can read the Luchador reports, and unlike me, who actually does watch the show, but even if you don't watch it, you'll be entertained reading about guys that you don't even know because it's just so well written.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Don, tell us about the stuff that you've been involved with of late, and are you going back to college, or what's your thoughts on the scheme and everything?
On the scene, you said?
Yeah.
The wrestling scene is a bit of a disaster, of course, and I like to joke that if I actually thought about the things that have happened wrestling-wise, to me at least, in the last 3 months, I'd probably put a gun to my head. In the space of 3 months, I guess I lost one job that I really loved, that paid a great salary, where I loved going to work, and then I thought I had another job that would have paid probably more money that probably would have been pretty fun too, and then that fell apart. So at that point, I kind of, as we've talked about, made the decision that God loved the wrestling business, but I'm going to have some sort of a backup plan, and at least until things change. So my plan is to go back to school, and then I'm also still involved in the business, but really doing things that I have some control over, such as the newspaper columns and the radio show that I do, and also I'm doing some booking for a guy up here, and just keeping myself involved, but certainly not like I was.
What are your thoughts as far as How would you handle the WCW situation if you were in charge or if you were making suggestions?
And how do you think it's been handled so far?
I think obviously the big problem is, like, where do you go until you've got that time slot? If they come back to you and say, okay, well, you've got a great time slot on, I don't know, a Tuesday night or something like that in prime time, then I think you can say, okay, let's go ahead and spend the money. Let's get the guys we need to get, like a Goldberg, like a Ric Flair, and go all out with it. I think they either need to forget about it entirely or go all out. I think it's obvious that if you go halfway with it, that's not the answer. I think that they need to go big, and I think Vince is a guy who does go big, and I think that's the way to do it. And I think they need to do it sooner rather than later because obviously, momentum gets lost as you wait and wait and wait.
As far as a competition group, I mean, and you would be someone who probably would hear about it if only because you'd be one of those guys that would be, one of the first round of calls. I mean, what type of stuff are there any rumblings out there? And I mean, I guess the whole key is the television because there's a million people who want to do it, but until you get the TV, it's kind of just a dream.
Yeah, well, it's difficult. I mean, you keep hearing about, these guys that want to open up, and, I was hearing about that after the Fusion thing. Oh, there's going to be a lot of groups that are going to maybe open up, and I just thought, with the way that the market is right now in terms of the way that wrestling is perceived by some television companies, I just thought, I can't wait around and for someone to open up and get television because it may be a long time before anyone else gets a TV clearance. So it's obviously very difficult. But, I mean, it's not just having, as Paul Heyman with ECW was evidence, I mean, it's not just about having TV. You've got to have the right deal because if you don't have the right deal, it can be difficult, as was evidenced by Paul apparently having some deals brewing, the latter days of ECW, but, basically realizing that, hey, these aren't the right deals. This isn't going to help solve the problem.
Now, as far as booking shows, have you found that since everything kind of crumbled and all that's left right now is the WWF and there's a ton of free agents that really have no place to go, have you found that what they're charging to come in has dropped a little bit, or is it still pretty much the same or higher?
Honestly, most of the guys that I book are friends of mine, so it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I guess I like to think that they're doing me favors in terms of what they charge me when they come in. I haven't been, I'm someone who, when I book someone, I want it to make sense kind of for everybody, and so I haven't really had a real sense of kind of like, well, I've called 10 free agents and tried to book them to come in. I mean, I think that, I would hear things that certain guys were lowballing promoters and things like that and knocking everyone's prices down. And I mean, you're going to get that when the market's flooded to a certain extent. But I really haven't seen it because the guys I'm calling as a friend, and also they know that I'm in the business. So I think that sometimes, my price to come and work for a guy like Scott D'Amore might be different than my price to come and work for a promoter I'd never heard of who was a mark, to be quite honest.
Well, and also that you don't know that you can trust.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
If you have no track record with them.
Having said that, there aren't a whole lot of promoters in North America who are willing to, fly me in from Winnipeg and give me a nice payoff to come and cut a promo. So Scott D'Amore might be the only one. So I offer to work, but I warn them that if they actually put me out there and wrestle, it could totally destroy their territory. So just expose the whole thing.
Have you, I remember years and years ago before.
By the way, I just want to mention real quick, that was a great line you said on an ECW show once. I have killed territories before, and I'm willing to kill them again.
Actually, it's Lance Storm that kills territories.
He has that track record.
Lance Storm was in Smoky Mountain. Lance Storm was in War. Lance Storm was in ECW. Lance Storm was in WCW. It's like a curse or something with him, I think. But, yeah, actually, that was a line.
This is not good for a man's resume.
Killed them. I think I've kept Winnipeg kind of on life support, where someone's begging them to kick the plug out, but we keep it going. So,
as far as you years and years ago, you brought up Ultimo Dragon. I think you even told the story for for virtually no money, and you got a match with him and Chris Jericho up in I think it was in Winnipeg at a TV taping, wasn't it?
Yep, in 1995, I think, or 6.
Now,
95 and 96, I brought him in, actually, yeah.
Have you had a chance to, use any of his go? Because I remember you and I talked about this once before. Use some of his students or just talk to him about that idea?
I actually spoke with Dragon a few weeks ago, and I'm looking to bring in Dragon Kid and somebody else, and basically we're just kind of trying to work out the logistics because it's going to be a lot easier for me to fly those guys in from Mexico than from Japan, which is kind of puts the kibosh on it if I had to do that. So that's what I'm looking at doing, and I mean it's kind of same philosophy I had when I brought Chris and Dragon in. I mean, no one certainly in Winnipeg had ever really heard much about Dragon, but I mean I knew that they were having some of the best matches in the world at the time, and Dragon was one of the top guys, and I thought, you know, why do what every other independent promoter is doing and bring in the same guys? Why not bring in something different? And this is what I would like to do now with Dragon Kid, although I confess that I've never actually seen a match of his. I've just spoken with you and other people about him, and I've seen the Dragon Rana gimmick on the internet. You know, and I've talked to Dragon about him. So if Dragon recommends him, and if he's had a hand in training him and whatnot, then that's enough for me. So yeah, I'm looking to do that and kind of mix it up with various other guys that you bring in. But I think it's good to give people something that they've never seen before and shock them. I mean, that certainly was the reaction when we had Jericho and Dragon up here. I mean, they'd certainly seen Jericho up here because he started out, you know, in our territory a little bit, and but they certainly saw a different Chris Jericho with Ultimo Dragon than they had with, for example, Bulldog Bob Brown, God rest his soul.
I don't think so. Did you go to the Winnipeg show over the weekend?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
You know, I don't. But, you know, I look at it like, you know, they released me. I'm not going to go down there and look like a mark, like I'm looking for work. You know, to me, it's just, I wanted to, the reason I would go down would be to see some of my friends, and I got to do that anyway. I saw Chris, and I saw Rhino and Jerry and Spike Dudley and a few of the guys. So, no, I didn't see the show, but I heard it was tremendous. I heard they had about 12,000, which is big for Winnipeg. Big gate and a hell of a show. A lot of coverage on Jericho in the days leading up to it. Of course, he's Winnipeg's favorite son.
And this is something I don't know, if, Don, if you're familiar with this, and I'm not even sure, Brian, if you are either. But someone at Garen Shea just sent me an email saying that Troy Graham will be returning to the Mid-South Coliseum on June the 15th, who was known as the Dream Machine in the early 80s. Did you ever see that guy do a promo, Don?
Never.
This is probably the most underrated promo guy in the history of professional wrestling because no one's ever heard. He only worked the Memphis territory that I'm aware of, and it was like, who could I compare his promos to? If he was around today, he would be one of the top 5 promos in the business, easily. I mean, it was, you know, he was up there with Lawler when, you know, in that same period, as far as just talking, not as far as wrestling. And then he ended up in what happened to him? He had an injury. He broke his ankle, and he never really could wrestle again afterwards. But he's coming back, and Garen Shea goes, I cannot wait to hear him do an interview. Man, I hadn't even thought about him in years, but awesome interview. Let's go to Mike in Phoenix. Mike, you're up with Don Callis and us.
Hey, Dave and Brian, how's it going?
Hey.
It's going good.
And Don. I wanted to ask Don a question. I need to work on my body, but I want to break into wrestling. Do you think I should start out at just a regular wrestling school, or what about like Ohio Valley or UPW or something like that?
I'm not really familiar with those systems. I mean, certainly if you can get into a system like that that's a feeder system for WWF, you're probably saving yourself some time. I mean, in terms of the body thing, I mean, learn how to work. You know, just about anybody with the right nutrition and training can improve their body to the point where they look passable. But there's not a lot of guys out there who can work. So pick a school where they're going to, you know, train you how to work and then work on your body as you go along.
Okay. Hey, who do you guys think will be the next WWF champ?
Rock?
I was thinking Triple H maybe after he comes back.
Well, I'm sure when he comes back he'll get it at some point. I'm sure.
You know, Jericho and Benoit, I don't think they're going to give it to him though.
No.
What do you guys think?
You know, I would not expect either of them to get anytime soon.
Yeah. If you look long term, and again, they can always do switches, you know, quick switches, like give it to one and then take it away a month later. But if you look at long term where the money looks to me, it's with Austin as champion because you've got 2 big money opponents. You've got the Hunter feud and you've got The Rock coming back, you know, which is left off of WrestleMania because they really didn't, except for the one match on Raw, they never did a match with Rock as challenging to heel Austin. So ultimately, you know, as much as I think that Austin's turn was a mistake, that they shouldn't have turned him heel because he hasn't been as big a draw, if someone goes, well, you know, since it's not working, should we turn him back? I would say at some, yes, but like in 9 months, because you've got more money programs on one side than the other. Don, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would concur with that, and we were having a conversation actually on the way into Windsor today about, if you were the booker, would you put the strap on Jericho or Benoit right now? And I think just that Austin has just stepped up so much as a heel and is so tremendous right now in terms of how he's working. I think you leave it on him. I mean, it's really still kind of sinking in that he even is a heel for some people, and I think that his work is so outstanding right now that I think you just, let him get some steam and run with it. And as you say, there are money matches. And the other big money match, if they decide to go that route, would be Goldberg, right?
Yeah, but that one, he can be a babyface for that one.
Yeah, sure he could.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as like with the Rock and Triple H, it's much better off with him being a heel. One thing also
I kind of see it as like Rock coming back this summer, taking the belt, keeping it maybe through Survivor Series, dropping it back to heel Austin, and then leading up to Austin and Hunter at WrestleMania.
I think that's a good plan. I don't think that's. In fact, I would even bet that their plans are pretty similar to that. Of course, plans change. Guys get hurt. Somebody gets over. But I think that if you were, yes, yeah. But I think with Rock's schedule and everything. But I'll bet that wouldn't be out of the realm of their plans either. I think. Anything else, Mike?
Yeah, I also want to know if I might want to get into reporting like you. How would I go about doing that?
I would watch a lot and read a lot, and I would read. I'll tell you what. I would read a lot of wrestling writing, but I would read a lot of news writing and sports writing as well.
How do you break in though?
Probably now. I'm not a good example because
wrestling reporting is like something you don't really break into. I think it's kind of something different than anything else.
Yeah, I think that what you should do is
I sent out a newsletter one day, and that's how I broke in. I don't know how Dave did it.
Well, largely the same thing. I started typing a newsletter and I started sending it out to people, and the word got around. It wasn't
what about, like having a show or something.
The show, I did the newsletter for like 17 or 18 years, and the people who were starting the station had been reading the newsletter for years and years to find out about wrestling and also Ultimate Fight, and they thought that they called me up to do the show. So that's
okay,
and then Brian did it.
I want to say, Brian, you do a good job on the board, and thanks for answering all my questions.
Oh, thanks.
And
thanks for reading the questions.
What?
Thanks for reading those questions.
Oh, yeah, I love it, because I send a lot from Mike from Phoenix, and you answer all of them. It's great.
Cool. Awesome.
So, thanks. I'm going to continue to listen to the show. I love it, and I will talk to you guys later.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Frank in Albany.
Actually, Dave, I wanted to say that Lance Storm and I are actually coming out with our own version of the DVD Top 500. But it's
are you really?
Seriously? Lance Storm and Don Callis' Top 500 Internet Reporters. It's tremendous. You'll be happy to know that you and Brian Alvarez are both in the top 3, and then we don't have anything from 3 to 497. We've got like the bottom 3. I'll give you a wild guess who they are.
From you? I got a pretty good idea who one of them is. So speaking of that, because actually is Lance around?
Lance is actually late, as usual.
Okay.
He will be here.
Yeah, because I actually wanted to talk to him about that, but since you brought it up, you actually wrote a column about the top 500, and we should discuss that subject. What are your thoughts? Because your thoughts are pretty similar to Lance's.
Here's the really funny part about that is that I wrote the column, and Lance wrote the column because he genuinely was upset about this list. And I'll be totally honest. I have to write a newspaper column every week, and sometimes I'm a little short on material. And I was sitting under my balcony. What the hell am I going to write about? Lance had called me. I had to listen to him complain for an hour about this stupid list. So I thought, you know what? I'll just get people stirred up, and I'll write about it. I didn't even read Lance's column. I just did it from what he told me on the phone. Put this thing out, and all of a sudden, I'm getting slammed by, I guess it's John Molinaro on Slam Wrestling, saying that, I have no right to say the blah, 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 because I say I like Cracker Barrel, and what qualifies me to say I like Cracker Barrel and all of this stuff. It's, of course, totally missing the point. And the really funny thing is Lance read that, and Lance was in Winnipeg with me. He got more irate, so we got to do something about this. I said, who cares? But it's nice because it stirs up controversy, it stirs up debate.
The thing is, there's no lists of anything. Like if it's top 500 movies or something like that. Like at the end of the year, people will come out or in human history, like the top 100 movies of all time. It's like, all of those lists are totally subjective. So you got to, right. I think with the list, you just got to accept that now. On the DVD 500, I mean, I look at that and I go like, my God, those guys worked their ass off on it, but I disagree with a hell of a lot of that list. And that's kind of how I saw it.
I think Lance made a good point in terms of saying that a lot of these guys who are judging it are judging matches, and what my point was that, you know, except in very acute cases, like someone like yourself, Dave, who's been around for a long time, where you might pick this up. 99.9% of the time, no one's going to pick this up. You got two wrestlers in the ring. Wrestler A forgets two of the false finishes going into the finish. Wrestler B reminds him and covers for it or improvises, but the fans don't know that. They just look at it and go, yeah, well, wrestler is a hell of a worker, blah, blah, blah. Really, the better worker in that match was wrestler B. So if we're talking about judging workers, it's impossible for that fan or that internet reporter to judge because he does not know that. He can judge the wrestling in the match or he can judge the match quality perhaps, but we don't know who the better worker was because we're not actually in the ring, or our eye is not will not perceive that little, oh, look, that guy's lost, oh, look, he covered for it.
Well, you know, that's the same thing, though, as far as, like, in sports, let's say, judging a running back, you know, like if the blocker, you know, blows the block and he's sacked for a loss of a couple of yards, you know what I mean? Like the football experts will be able, and certainly his teammates will go in there and go, hey, you know, it was the blocker, you know, the blocker blew it, or, you know, a guy gained a bunch of yards and they'll go, you know, and everyone thinks that the running back's the best running back in the league, and the guys on, you know, pretty much only the guys on the team are going to deep down know, hey, you know, we got this awesome lineman who keeps clearing holes for him, and he's looking great, you know. So everything, you know, it ends up being a team effort, and that stuff happens, you know, kind of in any kind of a list. There's a million outside forces. You know what you were talking about. Pretty much, if you're not the wrestlers, you're not going to know that. But as a fan, you know, I think they're looking at match quality, and that's an interesting thing to rate.
List, though. The list was actually ranking wrestlers. Now, I can see judging certain wrestlers, because everyone knows that Chris Benoit is better than the Big Show. I mean, it doesn't take a wrestler to tell you that. You can tell just watching it on TV. But to rank, my whole thing was like, what's the difference between number 34 and number 35?
Well, there is no difference.
How can you tell? I don't have so much of a problem with ranking wrestlers or ranking matches, but you know, 1 through 500 as far as who's a good worker, it's totally impossible.
But even when you're doing match quality,
everyone knows that like Exorcist is a better movie than Rugrats in Paris, but you can't judge like in a rank 500 movies.
But people have done that too.
Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense to do that either.
The thing that amazes me, I mean, think about the amount of time that was spent and mental energy, in a sense, in my mind, anyway, in my opinion, wasted on coming up with the top 5. This is a mind-boggling.
When I was a kid, I used to do that with the top 100, and it was a lot of time. Well, I used to watch tapes of 20 circuits when they had them.
I flunked a few university courses ranking wrestlers, but I never got past the top 10.
You know, the one thing also is like those guys, and you know, they were trying to, and they knew it, because I mean, I've had correspondence back and forth with a lot of those guys as far as they're trying to rate it based on match quality, and match quality is also sometimes unfair, because you could have a guy, and I'll just give just an example. If you have a guy who's a top independent guy, and let's throw Chris Daniels just as a name, right? You know, one of the top independent guys in the country. Everyone will pretty much agree with that. When he's out there, he's working pretty much main events, and he's working 20, 25-minute matches a lot of the time. You know, like good, not always, but you know, with the right guys. And you can do a hell of a match in 20, 25 minutes when you're a great worker, as compared with a guy who may be actually a better worker, who's in the World Wrestling Federation, Dean Malenko, just as an example, I'll throw a name, who's given 4 minutes. And I mean, you know, what are you gonna do in 4 minutes? I mean, you can do a good match in 4 minutes, but it's certainly not gonna be as good as a 20-minute match by a worker who's not as good if you're talking about high-level workers. And it's just like, you know, the opportunity and the spot on the card you're at and what you're called on to do. And it's not like, you know, match quality. I mean, match quality in a sense you're going to go, that's fair, but, you know, even that one's not fair.
Well, you know what? You used to do this in the newsletter, and you haven't done it for a long time, and I don't know why, but maybe you'll tell us right now. You used to take, like, the star ratings of people in big matches, and you would use that to determine the rankings as far as how good a worker they were. Do you remember this?
No, I didn't. I never tried to say that they were ratings of that. I would do it just to show,
or
like,
just
this
the
was
average.
the
star
average for
rating,
the
right?
year, like the match. Yeah, I would do the match quality of, like, all the top workers for the year. I would do that, but I never tried to say that, like, because one guy was 3.7 and the other was 3.8, the guy 3.8 is a better worker, because that's not the case.
You can, because, Big Show, let's say Big Show had a series of matches with Jericho, Angle, and Benoit. Okay, Big Show wouldn't be the reason these matches were better, but his average would go up because he was working with better people.
Well, it was like when I did that, all the guys who worked, if you would do that in the old days, all the guys who worked programs with Flair would be top 25 workers, even if they were like Nikita Koloff.
Yeah.
If you're doing it that way. So,
yeah.
Anyway, let's go to Frank in Albany. Frank, what's up?
How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Good.
I keep on hearing people say Vince should get Goldberg, Vince should get Goldberg. Goldberg ain't going to sign. If I was getting paid that much money to sit home and do nothing, I'm going to sit home and do nothing. And go,
if his contract is bought out,
if the contract's bought out, yeah.
And if Vince really wanted him and offered him $10 million, money talks.
I think what Vince should do is the same thing that
$10
Paulie
million's
did.
too much.
I think Vince should do the same thing that Paulie did.
For $150 million.
In the way he should. Just get rid of this, stop the invasion, get it over with, and start small. Build guys like Lance Storm, Hugh Morris, Mike Awesome, send them around Booker T and Scott Steiner. People will watch when they notice, hey, this is a pretty good product. Now the problem is, who's gonna pick him up? Maybe somebody like a local thing like MSG will pick him up. People will watch. He'll get a big time network, and then we'll get some competition. Vince doesn't need to sign any more of these deadbeat guys like Ken Shamrock, who in my opinion was an overpaid guy who's a great UFC fighter, but when he came to Vince, he had no personality, no charisma, and Vince couldn't do anything with him, and he had to bail out once he back to UFC. I mean,
he didn't bail out because he wasn't doing well in wrestling. He bailed out because he thought he had something left to prove, and he didn't want to wait till he was too old to do it. And he may have waited until he was too old to do it. So that was Shamrock's choice. They wanted him, and they were. WWF was very. I want to say, like, they were pretty upset that he left, but they understood why. I mean, he left on good terms with them, but they certainly, there were a lot of people there that in the WWF who second guessed, like making wrestling money and going to UFC money, which is, in his case, actually was pretty comparable. But in the long run, obviously, there's far, far, far more money in wrestling and far more longevity in wrestling, even if the money's equal.
You think $10 million over 3 years is too much for Goldberg?
It all depends on the business. I mean, if he's over like crazy, no, absolutely not. But he's got to get over to justify that. He's got to be over like crazy.
He's a very valuable part of creating a new brand that you're hoping is going to help turn the business around. And if you have $150 million or whatever, what's 3.3 of that a year?
I think they're going to base the whole thing around Booker T. That's their man. That's the man they want to base the company. He's the flagship. He's going to carry the flag.
That's a risk. I mean, and they may pull it off. That's a hell of a risk. I mean, because if you look at the money Booker T's drawn in his life and the money Goldberg's drawn in his life and and more, it doesn't really matter what they've done. It matters what the potential is for them to do. I got to say that Bill Goldberg's got a lot more. I mean, Booker T's a better worker for sure, but Bill Goldberg, some guys just have something. If it's a name or what, and they come along, they don't come along very often. It's like a Bruno Sammartino or a Bill Goldberg had it. Steve Austin, Hogan. And those guys, for whatever, Dusty Rhodes had it too. Some guys just got this one thing that they're over, and maybe they shouldn't be, or they're over, whatever the reasons are. They are, and you just can't deny it, and you gotta go with it because they can mean a lot of money because they just hook the casual person that normally wouldn't go to wrestling.
One more thing, you mentioned Dusty Rhodes. He made some comments about Kevin Nash. He's more or less kissed his ass on his website.
Yes, he does.
Didn't he say Oz had the greatest ring entrance of all time?
Does Dusty Rhodes actually watch the wrestling matches he produces and he books? Because when those two were side by side, booking and taking care of business, those weren't the great television shows. I mean, you can see
even Mancow knew that Oz was horrible.
Every Kevin Sullivan producing comical stuff I can laugh at. It wasn't the greatest stuff, but Kevin Sullivan made you laugh. I mean, when I looked at the Grand Wizard yelling, Sullivan, I thought that was funny.
Oh, you mean Curtis
What
Ikea?
did that mean for business?
It didn't do anything for business, but it's better to watch what Nash and the American Dream and Dusty Rhodes did. I mean, Dusty, he signed a bunch of guys like Scotty Anton and those guys down in Turnbuckle, and he's expecting to go to another level with pay-per-view and stuff. I don't see it happening. I mean,
well, it's good. It's
you know
going from his level to paper.
Signing people. Is Don Callis? Don, are you on the line still? Oh, where'd he go?
Don's not
I just want
here.
to know if Don has ever worked for an independent group that has signed somebody to a contract.
oh, they're not seeing. So he's got those guys that work turnbuckle.
Yeah.
So that was my point. Yeah, you
Okay.
get them signed, but you work for that company.
Don's here.
Hello.
Hey there,
Don,
Don.
have you ever worked for a company that signed you to a contract, an independent group?
Yes.
Really?
My promoter, Tony Condello, in 1990, signed me to a 9-year contract making a guarantee of $40 a night. Of course,
You gotta be kidding me.
he was unable to even prevent himself from breaching that small amount of money, so the contract was worth nothing. But yeah, he would sign guys to contracts, but I mean, you can't. Obviously you can't because you can't afford to pay guys.
Yeah.
A 9-year deal.
It's
You
difficult.
really did
$40
that?
though. I mean, hey, that was big money in
He saw you like the WWF saw Mark Henry.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a $40 a night albatross around Tony's neck for the rest of his life.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Let's go. Is Derek next?
Derek,
Yes.
Yes.
what's
Derek.
going on?
How you guys doing?
Really good.
Good. First question I had was going to be for Jeff, but you guys might be able to answer it. It does regard their website. They used to have an archive section with just a ton of interviews, quite similar to yours. But now, like within the last month, you go to it, and there's only like the last 2 interviews that they've done.
Is Jeff around?
Hey, I'm here.
Hey, this is for
I
Jeff.
just missed that. Callis just handed me the phone. Goes, there's something about the law.
Okay, here. Go ask Jeff.
It's a cop.
No, my question was, I've been going to your website and listening to your show, Jeff, for quite a while, and I got to tell you, I love it. You and Dan do a great job.
Thank you very much. Well, Dave's a big part of that, too. Don't forget about Dave.
Well, yeah, I don't miss Dave's show either.
Okay.
My question was, the archive section, there used to be a large amount of interviews that you guys had done in the past, and lately when I go there, there's only like the most recent ones you've done.
Yeah, we're getting killed on bandwidth, so we had to move to a different server until we can get a stronger server. We intend on getting those interviews back up there, hopefully by the end of the summer. There's like 4 years worth of interviews on there. That people really dig. So it's a matter of when we get a better server. The server we were with, the company we were with, MaxLink, went out of business about a month ago, so we had to shuffle everything off to a separate server. So once that gets dealt with, hopefully by the end of the summer we'll get all those back up.
Okay, great. And then whoever can answer this one for me, the whole thing with Hogan and Russo last year, I believe it was at the Great American Bash when Hogan did or Jared did the laydown job. How much of that was a work and how much of that was a shoot?
Jeff, why don't you give your opinion on this one? Because we've talked about this one at
The whole thing
length.
was a work from start to finish. From start to finish, I think the entire thing was a work.
I think
every single thing was a work, except I think some of what Russo said was not.
I think that Hogan probably was real upset over something Russo said, but as far as everything that happened, as far as like that thing where with Jarrett laying down and all that, I think that was Hogan, Russo, and Bischoff concocted that and tried to fool the boys. And it's one of those things. It's like, what was the purpose of it in the long run? I mean, everyone talked about it,
They
but
fooled themselves right out of business.
they fooled themselves right out of business. I mean, like, where did it build? I mean, I remember that night, and they actually had a good pay-per-view that night because they put the strap on Booker T, and we had a lot of people talking. But in the long run, did that really help their business? And I mean, wrestling is such a tough environment anyway, in that there's always going to be an inherent lack of trust, even when there doesn't need to be. So why add to that by doing something to the boys where the boys are going like, I can't believe a word this promoter says. I mean, they have, usually they don't anyway. So don't exacerbate that situation.
You know what?
Yeah, the whole line where Russo says, you're never going to have to see Hogan again, and it's because of pieces of shit like him that guys like Booker T got held down for all those. That was all the work? Was Hogan aware he was going to say that?
I think that aspect of it probably was a work. So, I mean, I don't know what was and wasn't, because there is a lawsuit out there. But I think as far as they had a plan. I mean, they had a plan that Hogan would leave with the belt, and then he would come back a couple of pay-per-views later holding that belt when somebody else had the other belt, and they would have a unification match. I mean, that was the storyline. And there was, I mean, supposedly...
They were convinced that was going to work?
What?
They were convinced that was going to work?
Yeah, because they were going to fool the wrestlers, and then they figured if you fool the wrestlers, then you can fool the fans. And you know what? And they fooled some fans, but the fooling fans is not the name of the game.
No.
You know, the name of the game is building programs.
You know what? And even we had Booker T on the night before the American Bash, and we had pretty much, I mean, between talking to everyone in the industry, we pretty much had the entire scenario for Great American Bash.
I knew Booker T was going to win 3-4 days before the show.
He was like, "Yep, that's pretty much what I've been told."
Yeah. No, everyone knew Booker T was going to win. They had it on the board. You know, didn't they, that day? So, I mean, that aspect of it, you know. Yeah. That day they would do something funny with Hogan, and Booker T would beat Jarrett to win the title.
I'm sure, you know, like you said, Russo said some things that Hogan didn't like, and I'm sure Russo went to him and said, look, I'm going to say some things about you, and they didn't go over a very specific script, and, you know, Hogan got his back up and thought some things were, you know, uncalled for. Not necessarily untrue, but just uncalled for.
Russo called him bald.
And my last question was, let's say for argument's sake, King of the Ring doesn't do a good buy rate with Austin, Jericho, Benoit somehow involved in the main event. Do you see the WWF hitting the panic button in any direction, whether it's their product or the WCW Invasion project?
They've already hit the panic button by adding Benoit to the match. So if that thing doesn't go over, they're going to go, you know, overboard.
They'll do WCW Invasion because they have no other panic button to push. I mean, who else can you hotshot in that spot that'll draw money right away? No one.
I mean, my opinion is, I think that they pretty much have the next pay-per-view, which would be the Invasion, and the following pay-per-view. I think they pretty much have them laid out. So as far as, I don't think they'll hit the panic button because they have a plan, kind of where they're going. But, you know, but I think that the things they don't have confidence in, you know, that could be shaky. And unfortunately, you know, if the buy rate, because it's the same thing we said a year ago when they did that July pay-per-view last year, if the buy rate came in low, which last year it came in okay, if it comes in low, you know, they will not blame Austin. So unfortunately, those other guys, you know, those other guys have to prove that they can draw because there's so many people who think they can't. And if they don't, you know, the naysayers will, you know, they'll have their evidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What was the buy rate for Fully Loaded last year, Dave?
It was a little bit over a 1. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was like
400,000, wasn't it?
It was about 400
or 420.
I think it was 420,000 buys, so it was like 1.05 probably, something like that.
Okay. So do you think they'll compare the buy rate from July of 1999 to the one of, July of 2000 to June of 2001? And if there is an improvement, they'll look at that as saying, well, you know, we've given Jericho and Benoit opportunities to prove themselves in the main event. They're not doing it, and then go in a totally different direction. And the next thing we know, somebody like Test is getting a push.
No, I don't think that that's going to help Test or anyone like that. But I do think, for their sake, if they do, I would say right now, 420, 425, they're okay. If they do like 375, they're not as good. They won't be looking as good.
Okay.
You know, that's kind of how I would look at it if I was looking at it from, you know, from their perspective. Is you can do 425 with the show right now, all things considered in wrestling. That's a nice number.
Well, and I hope it works out because, you know, those two guys have worked their tails off to get to the position that they're at. And
the thing that scares me now is, the thing that scares me now is, and Jeff, you know, we talked about it earlier, is Benoit really has worked incredibly hard in the last, I mean, he always has, but in the last couple of weeks, I mean, he's worked way over the call of duty. I mean, he did basically 5 falls on the pay-per-view. He did a TLC match. He did, you know, 2 great singles main events, that tag match. And now he's hurting real bad. And I'm just afraid.
He's been hurt for a while, too, hasn't he?
Yeah, but it's been since the TLC match, I mean, like, real bad.
Yeah, he really started to notice it the day after the TLC match, so last Wednesday was when he really started to notice it. I mean, how much of a work rate hole is that going to leave? I mean, Hunter out is one thing, and Hunter and Benoit out is a totally different picture altogether.
Yeah.
And then you're going into summer house shows where it's already going to be enough for Steve Austin to just keep himself healthy with the guys that are on the roster now, and then you throw into the equation that he's got to stay healthy for a program with Rock and a program with Hunter. How's he going to get through the summer? All those TVs, and he's like the one guy if Benoit goes down.
This is for Jeff and I'm a loyal fan from Oshawa and listen to you and Dan whenever possible, despite the way Mojo jobs your show. I think the Law is the premier wrestling show available, and I want to say the tribute to Owen Hart from a couple weeks back was one of your best, and it was really helped to remind me what a tremendous man and performer Owen was, and it was an incredible loss. I want to commend you for such a fitting tribute.
Oh, well, thanks very much. I mean, it was, I don't want to say it was like a fun show to put together, but I mean, it was, actually a lot of fun going back and that whole week, watching Owen matches again and going over old Owen promos and finding interviews from guys the last 4 or 5 years talking about Owen. A lot of tremendous feedback. As far as Mojo jobbing us out, I mean, we've got Major League Baseball right in front of us now on Sundays. Trust me, we're trying to get our time slot changed. But
I mean, your Sunday time slot was absolutely perfect, though.
Oh,
when we had 3 pay-per-views every 4 weeks.
Oh, it was tremendous. I mean, it's like Heyman, Bischoff, and Vince were doing our show for us, 3 weeks out of the month. It was great.
I mean, I would come on there, right after the pay-per-view. It was like, it couldn't have been better. I mean, now for the one day, for the one Sunday a month, it's an awesome spot still.
Yeah, I know. No kidding.
Let's go to John and Al.
I'm at the arena here with and all the guys here, Canyons here and Nova and all that. Have you guys seen Tommy Dreamer lately?
No,
I saw him a couple weeks ago. Yeah, he lost a lot of weight and everything.
He looks awesome. He's lost like 30 pounds. He's still kept like a lot of good bulk up top. It looks like his back is just, it looks like it's really healthy. He's just warming up here and stretching. Tommy Dreamer looks amazing.
Yeah. When we saw him in L.A., he'd already dropped a lot of weight, and he's probably dropped more. Nova looks amazing too.
Yeah, and you know what? He's off to 0-1 next fall.
Oh, Nova's going to 0-1 for July.
June
14th.
I don't think he's going for July. I think. Did you say August or September? I can't remember. August.
Oh, okay. Because the June show is kind of like, that's right, because they were at the UPW. But the June show is kind of a mess because so many of the guys got pulled. I don't even know who's on the June show anymore.
I have no idea either. But yeah, he's off to 0-1 with Hashimoto. I mean, yeah, it's all done through UPW.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's go to John in L.A. John, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Going really good.
All right, I got a question for both of you, actually for Brian in particular. I listen to the show quite often. I hear you guys all the time, especially Brian, talking about how important it is that they get Goldberg to make the WCW thing work. And I can't help but think that you might be overstating the importance of Goldberg. I mean, granted, the guy had a great run in the beginning, but we're talking about a guy who's really injury-prone, has had a bad attitude, has walked out, numerous times with the contract situation. I mean, do you really think Goldberg is the end-all, be-all for them?
I think he's end-all, be-all, but I think he's a very important part of it. I'm just looking at the number of emails that we get asking when is Goldberg going to come in, when is Ric Flair going to come in, and I can only think that the general fan, just looking at some of the numbers that he popped, has got to think the same thing. And when you think of WCW, you think of Ric Flair and you think of Goldberg.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Another thing,
from a perception point of view, I mean, the WWF is associated with Austin or Rock, and WCW, for whether you like him or not, or whether you think he's a draw or not, it's been Goldberg. He's on the cover of magazines, he's on the talk show circuit. I mean, for all intents and purposes, as much as the diehards, feel that Ric Flair represents WCW, from a casual fan point of view, the guys that are going to really make put the gravy on the potatoes, it's Goldberg.
You also have to look at it as the day that Vince went on TV and was mentioning people's names and just the reaction that the guy got.
They did.
Just the fact also got a very good reaction, but
Bagwell and Steiner got great reactions too.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was nowhere close to Goldberg's though. Goldberg was a different league from everybody.
Steiner you all know when that first show starts, because I guarantee you that there will be chants, and I think they will be chanting for Goldberg, and I think they will be chanting for Ric Flair.
Well, when Leviathan was on in a dark match, everybody chanted for Goldberg, and there's nobody has ever chanted for Scott Steiner or Buff Bagwell or even Ric Flair on at any WWF house shows that I've heard.
What is the WCW promotion going to do when they run a show in the Carolinas and they don't have Ric Flair?
They're not going to run a show in the Carolinas if they're smart.
We don't know when they're a long way from running house shows. They don't even have TV yet. So,
yeah.
Although I guess they're I'm sure the plan is for them to have TV in the fall. So, in some form.
Yeah, we talked about it before. I don't know if you guys have mentioned it today, but I mean, just use that heat time slot, guys. Just get all your WCW talent there.
Absolutely.
I know, that'd be such a perfect
if
slot.
worse comes to the only problem is that and Vince McMahon actually said this to me, is that you have to have. If you have a weak time slot for WCW as compared to WWF, it almost inherently comes off as the B company, and he thinks for this thing to work, both companies got to come off pretty equal. But I mean, Heat is still a hell of a lot better slot than, say, Saturday Night at 11. Saturday Night at 11, if WWF is prime time on Monday and Thursday and WCW Saturday Night at 11, then that's a weak start too.
I mean, if you have the Saturday night at the 11 time slot, you still have the same problem that you talked to Vince about. I mean, it's still perceived as the inferior company.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's got to be during the week, prime time.
Sunday at 7 is a good time slot. I mean, I think for wrestling, I think that's a good time slot. So.
You think an hour is enough?
Else?
You need 2 hours.
2.
Inevitably, you need to. I think 1 isn't the worst idea just yet, though. You don't want to have 2 bad hours.
Inferior.
True.
Whether it's better to have 2 or not, 1 is going to look like an inferior show. It's going to look like Heat. It's going to look like Jacked or Metal. Like WCW guys on Jacked or Metal. They got to have 2 hours.
Yeah, okay. You'll get 3 matches, maybe 4 if you're lucky.
Anything else, John?
In 1 hour, keep it, and maintain interest over the week too.
Hello?
Yeah, anything else, John?
Oh, yeah, I had one more question. I hear everybody banner around different names about the Undertaker thing, and everyone calls in and going, is there anybody at this point that wouldn't be a disappointment that you guys can think of?
I don't know. What do you think?
I
think the guy?
I think there are, but I don't know.
You think it's going to end up being a disappointment, Brian?
I'm not sure.
Well, they're giving so much time to it, it makes you wonder.
If you look back, it almost seems like it has to be a disappointment. But maybe their idea is, okay, every time we do this at this point, we got to do something for real this time.
I think this one won't be a disappointment, but I don't know if it's going to be like, I don't know how people will take it.
I've still got, the higher power in the back of my head when it comes to this. But, I mean, a lot of people called the show this week and said, you know what? It should be someone from WCW.
It could be.
Part of the interpromotional.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, if Steiner was healthy or signed or both, he'd be great for it.
Yeah, he's not healthy, though.
But
That's
then
the problem.
you're taking somebody that is a big name that could be of value to World Championship Wrestling, and all of a sudden they're a WWF guy feuding with The Undertaker. Yeah. They don't need to take away any of their top names from WCW to put him in a feud with Undertaker.
Unless
they got a top name, he needs to stay in WCW and help that company.
Right. Well, unless they did a one-match thing to get exposure, maybe put Steiner over and then put him back in WCW. People are going to
over The Undertaker and then take him away. I mean, that's not the worst idea, but it's going to be a tough one. Well, it won't be Steiner anyway, though.
Right. Well,
how about using Raven and start telling the Raven story?
Man.
Someone on the comment board said, they said it has to be Mark Henry because there cannot be a perversion angle in the WWF that does not involve
him. All right, we're gonna head to Vince in Atlanta. Vince, what's going on?
Jeff, I'm a big fan of your show. I had a question about your website too.
Sure, what's up, Vince?
Your weekly interviews with like Perry Saturn and Lance Storm and stuff. Are you guys still gonna be doing that? Because I'd love to hear what Saturn has to say about.
You know what? Again, it's another scheduling conflict. I hate to keep coming back and burying the radio station. When it switched over from Talk 640 to Mojo Radio, which is the Guy Talk format, they went to a lot of syndicated sports programming, and a lot of that is run out of the studio in the evening where we used to do all of our interviews. So it's really just a scheduling conflict until all that gets sorted out. We're not going to be able to do any, very much pre-production at all. It's a real drag, I know. Actually, I'm going to talk to Lance about that when he comes in here today, see if we can bang one off this week at some time.
Yeah, because I really want to know what Saturn has to say, about the last couple of weeks. It's got to be something interesting at least.
Interesting guy.
Yeah. I also had a question. If Jericho or Benoit doesn't win the title at the King of the Ring, doesn't it just totally throw everything away that they've been trying to do with these guys? And
only if Austin destroys them.
So, but boy,
it's going to look. If there's no turn, it's going to. If one of them doesn't turn on the other, it's going to be real tough because it was sort of like they were both against Austin and he still won.
Right.
Yeah,
because,
that's true.
Because where would they go from there if Austin wins just cleanly over one of them?
Well, I mean, they've got Austin Rock and Austin Hunter on the horizon. The thing is that for those guys, but if one of them, let's just say for the sake of argument, that Jericho turns on Benoit and Austin sneaks over and and wins the match, for the sake of argument, then you got Benoit and Jericho feuding again, and that's like the last year all over again.
Yep. And now, then where does Austin go from there for the next couple of months?
Yeah.
Ross not coming back the day after King of the Ring.
I mean, how's this for a scenario? Just throw something in there. Vince screws Austin. Jericho wins and goes with Vince. And Jericho is made a star. And then everybody can look at the fact
that
that Austin
is a babyface.
Yeah, and then when Rock
and
comes
all
back.
these feuds with Rock and Hunter.
I know.
Either has to turn again, or it doesn't make sense.
I know.
Or babyface.
Yeah.
Unless they do something.
But you know what? They need him as a babyface to sell tickets this summer. I mean, long term, sure, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it's going to be a lot of work down the road. But
what they could also do is have. Go ahead.
They could do what? Sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to let you finish. What they could also do is just have Vince turn on Benoit, and Jericho and Austin both stomp him down. Then Austin's still a heel. Jericho's with Vince.
Austin's still the champ.
Yeah. And you know what?
Benoit can take some time off because he's going to get hurt, being stomped on by two guys.
If Benoit needs an injury angle, that is the way to do it.
Yeah, not bad. Although, I think the timing of a Jericho heel turn is about 4 or 5 months off. But actually,
You mean as far as 4 or 5 months early, or 4 or 5 months late?
Late.
Yeah, because I agree
with
with
that.
Yeah.
It would be perfect for Jericho and Austin team together against Benoit, but Benoit's hurt now, so I don't think they'd be able to do that.
Well, at least he'll get some time off.
Yeah.
You know what? And then Hunter can come back and bury Jericho.
But then, now if Benoit, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Benoit not to take time off because then you got
no top babyface.
Because you take that out of the mix and you have, let's say you have Austin and Jericho as your top heels and no Benoit, that means Undertaker and Kane and Austin and Jericho becomes your main event, and that's actually worse than we were during the dark period of whatever it was, 4 weeks ago.
You got to rush a whole bunch of stuff if that scenario unfolds, because then you're going to have to turn William Regal face.
Oh, it's way too soon for that.
Oh, totally, but I mean, it's almost panic time with the injuries.
How much more time?
They better hope Benoit starts healing. What'd you say, Rock?
Yeah, how much more time is he going to be gone?
It's dependent on the movie, but they're counting on Rock for the August pay-per-view.
Yeah.
For SummerSlam as the return. I mean, he'll probably return to TV before that, but I would think SummerSlam is Austin and Rock. I mean, it's not a definite or anything, but logic would tell me that's probably more locked in stone than anything else, really.
And if Austin loses the title at the next pay-per-view, wouldn't that take away from the Austin and Rock feud a little bit? Because there's no title.
Yeah, unless he wins it back. But that's a great argument. I mean, there's a great argument for Austin not losing the title until after SummerSlam, and then having it back for WrestleMania, defending against Hunter. So they could do a switch. They say a switch of a November to January switch type of a thing. Where Austin loses it and then regains it or something.
Right. Okay. Well, that's all I got, guys. Keep up the good show.
Okay. Thanks very much. We're gonna go to Steve in California. Steve, what's up?
Steve?
Yeah.
Are you eating?
Go ahead.
How you doing, Dave?
Doing good.
I was wondering, WCW got a lot of items from. WWF got a lot of items from WCW, like rings and stuff like that.
And they gave most of them away.
Hello?
They gave most of the rings away.
Oh, they did? Well, did they actually get the Black Scorpion voice distorter?
I don't know.
They may have.
Because that's what I was thinking every time I watched this stupid Stalker angle and everything. I
Maybe they got Ole Anderson.
I think Black Scorpion flashbacks. But a question I had for you, Dave, was there any truth to the Bret Hart rumors the other day on the internet?
You mean as far as him going to WWF? No truth at all.
Oh, okay. And was WWF actually contacting him at all, or?
They talked. I mean, WWF main, no, nobody talked. Carl DeMarco. Okay, here's the situation. It's I would clear up the Carl DeMarco Bret Hart thing. Carl DeMarco, who's the president of WWF Canada, used to be the personal business manager of Bret Hart. Bret Hart was very influential in Carl DeMarco getting his job as president of WWF Canada. So they've known each other for God knows how many, whatever. And they talk. I mean, they've known each other forever. They talk all the time. Carl DeMarco's dream, and Jeff knows this very well, is to get Bret Hart back in WWF. The only problem is that Vince and Bret both don't want it. And Carl's in the middle trying to, bring them together, and it usually blows up in Carl's face every time he tries. And this was probably another example of it, So that's what the situation.
We're going to have Carl DeMarco on live in studio this Saturday, so, if you're tuning in on the net, give us a buzz.
That's great.
Be a good question for him.
I have just an idea to throw around. One of my friends brought it up. He said that WWF should bring in Ric Flair to be Linda McMahon's new boyfriend and feud with Vince.
I've heard that one. I've heard people suggest it. It's what
That'd
the hell.
Hilarious, I think.
The thing with Ric Flair is, you want to see him with a 20-year-old blonde.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't want to see him with Linda McMahon.
Okay, but no, you're right, but you're wrong. Think about this one though. Okay, you're right. You want to see him with a 20-year-old, but Ric Flair's going to be with a woman with $500 million.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
I think the interviews would be phenomenal.
Ric Flair against Vince on interviews would be
How about him with
unbelievable.
Stephanie?
Rick with Stephanie?
Yeah.
Stephanie would, I don't think Hunter and Stephanie would go for that one.
One more question for you, Dave. When's the next Vallejo card?
For All Pro?
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't know the date. I think it's like coming up this week. I think it's coming up Saturday night.
Okay.
I could be wrong because I think they're doing like a couple of UPW versus APW matches. I'm pretty sure it's Saturday night.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dave.
Okay.
I was
Very
probably
welcome.
thinking dating Stephanie or feuding with Ric Flair. It's a toss-up.
Yeah. This is from Dan in Kingston, who goes, I just wonder if Jeff has heard anything more about a Raw or a pay-per-view coming to Toronto later in the year. Dave has said something about Survivor Series. And do you think that Austin would let Goldberg jackhammer him because of his neck?
No. I took
Brian,
German, so yes.
You think that Austin wouldn't want that one?
I don't
would.
think
He'd take it.
would. No way. Goldberg's still too green. Forget it. No way. If I were Austin,
You don't think so?
No way.
I think he would.
But what about pay-per-view in
Goldberg's
Toronto?
never really hurt anybody with that. He's never let go of anybody and dropped him on their head, and he's picked up the giant.
Ming. He almost dropped him on his head. He almost dropped Jimmy Hart on his head once.
You sure
this was when he was first starting out?
His afro was just so big that it looked like he landed on his head.
As far as WWF TV coming to ACC, I've heard, what was the first thing I heard? I heard Survivor Series for Air Canada Centre. I think that might have been scrapped for another pay-per-view, but I'm not sure. And TV, I believe they're doing something first or second week of September. It'll be probably a Raw, not a SmackDown.
Okay. Let's go to Scott.
Do you think Survivor Series will ever be back in Montreal?
They should. They should totally go back to Montreal.
I think they should go back to Montreal 2002, the 5-year anniversary.
Absolutely.
Absolutely should book Montreal. Anyway, Scott in Connecticut.
Yeah, how you guys doing?
I just thought of something. I take back what I just said because I already know the finish of the main event, and I don't want to see it again.
The same finish all over again.
The exact same finish, I know.
I was listening to what you guys were saying about King of the Ring, and I think that, Y2J should go with Vince and take Hunter's place as far as, that big power team with him and Austin. He should take Stephanie, too. Because,
don't count on that one.
I mean,
let's
that's
not go
what
overboard
they should
here.
do. I'm not saying that's going to happen, politics.
I like it. I like it.
I mean, they've always had that little, that little thing when, he calls it a
Jericho
slut
Stephanie, they've always had that thing, sure.
And then, that just brings Triple H back to do the Y2J program before he goes into Mania against Austin.
Yeah.
I think that's good. But I want to talk about, I don't know if you have a lot of time to discuss it because I think it's a pretty good topic, is that over here in the Northeast is like the independent circuit. I just want to talk about how, like, basically the average independent worker is, pretty young and, has a lot of, aerial talent, likes to, risk their body and stuff to get the crowd going and stuff like that. And basically, spend no time in the gym and, wear, like, street clothes and stuff like that. And I just watch all these guys and then I hear about, OVW and UPW, and granted these are farm promotions for WWF, so, they have to be, the cream of the crop as far as indie guys, but they look so much more professional than the guys we have up here.
Do you mean physique-wise or ring attire? Ring attire-wise, sure.
Yeah, that and more so physique-wise, because that's the day of their own control over that.
Physique-wise, because if you're getting paid a contract and you can buy the chemicals, and also the other thing is you're recruiting guys with better genetics too, so that gives them the advantage as well. I mean if a guy walks in, a football player or something, or like Brock Lesnar, just as a perfect example. Brock Lesnar, I mean, there have been a lot of NCAA champion wrestlers or All-American wrestlers. Okay, Brock Lesnar, the reason WWF signed him and New Japan wanted him and WCW wanted him and everyone wanted him as opposed to whoever won in '99, who I think it was Steve Neal. I don't even remember who it was. It's probably Steve Neal. Nobody who was not really recruited at all, because Brock Lesnar had a freaky physique, and everybody that watched him goes, God, this guy should be in pro wrestling. It's the physique that got him in, and that's the kind of thing that that's what they look for.
I mean, there's a lot of guys up here with talent and stuff like that. They're getting there, but I mean, like, none of them. I mean, I'm basically saying, I mean, there's a couple guys who have, like, they're cut and everything like Loki, but basically everyone else is just normal looking. They don't look like wrestlers.
I think a lot of it's the Northeast too, since it's such strong ECW territory.
Yeah.
where not as much of a premium was put on the bodies. I mean, how many guys in ECW wrestled with their shirts off?
Yeah.
Not a whole lot. I mean, a lot of it was jean shorts and ECW T-shirts.
And the ones that did were like Tony Mamaluke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
I just think that's a big problem as far as, there's so many independent workers, and it's like, isn't the first thing WWF looks at is you, like, physically? I mean,
generally, probably yes.
I mean, because, all right, it's sad to say, but there are a lot more guys who have talent than guys. All right, it used to not be this way. I mean, you got like guys like Luger and Billy Gunn who have the look, but they don't have the talent. There's a lot of guys who have the talent, but not the look. I think more so than the opposite.
I think that I kind of frustrated when a lot of guys, they have this impression that they're very, very talented, and sometimes they really are.
Yeah.
But they look like the dude in the front row,
Exactly.
and they still can't understand why they don't have a developmental deal yet.
Oh yeah, I understand it, and I think a lot of the fans do. But I mean, they still pay to see these guys, fly off the balcony and stuff like that. But then I can't picture any of these guys going anywhere.
Unless a company comes along. But I wonder how the thing with the American fans is that they want fantasy creatures, and.
Mm-hmm.
If you had if somebody came in and go, I'm going to have a company of real high-flying guys, and you had all those high-flying guys who look normal, I don't know how well it would get over. I mean, I hope it would.
Well, I mean, look at guys like, the high flyers in WWF, WCW. I mean, not really high flyers, but I mean, the real talented guys who don't have the big size look, like maybe Jerry Lynn, right? He's still, I don't think he could be any bigger, For his size, he's huge,
I think he could.
Oh, you mean physically? You're talking about physically bigger, or you're talking about pushed bigger?
Physically.
Oh yeah. If he gassed himself up, he could weigh more. But I mean, he probably couldn't look much better. He couldn't look much better, no, because he's pretty cut and everything, especially at his age.
These guys have all the talent in the world, but they're at WWF level, so they still have the body. They're still getting the body because that's the reason they're there. And other guys who may have talent. I mean, I'm not saying guys have as much talent as Jerry Lynn and Benoit. Guys who have a lot of talent aren't in WWF. It's because physically they don't. They're not WWF caliber.
Well, I mean, over here with the and we got to go right now, but with APW and everything, they had a lot of guys and they trained them all in working, and they really didn't concentrate on their bodies. And in the last couple of years, they hired a coach, a strength and conditioning coach, because I think they realized when they saw Prototype actually was the one. When they saw Prototype, who had that WWF developmental deal before he could, tie his boots in the ring literally because of how he looked, it was like. Why does he have a deal and he's just learning how to wrestle and we don't? And it's like, because this is what they're looking for, and that's the reality.
Yeah. All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, thanks a bunch, and we are totally out of time. Jeff, I want to thank you very much for joining us, and thank Don for joining us as well. And
I will indeed.
Hopefully, show tonight will go really, really well.
It's the ECW reunion. It's like Dreamer's here. Who else we got here? Swinger's here. Nova's here. Callis. Lance Storm's on his way.
Cool. So we'll be talking to you soon. Tomorrow we're going to have Dave Republic, who is an independent promoter from the Pacific Northwest. We'll be taking your phone calls, talking about all of the stuff at 5.